Hi, loves. Welcome to a new episode of the AW Confidential Podcast. Today's guest isn't just making art, he's making noise that truth seekers crave. Edel Rodriguez, Cuban-American artist and unapologetic visual disruptor, has graced the covers of Time, The New Yorker, Der Spiegel, among many others, with his bold, iconic imagery that speaks louder than any headline. From fleeing Castro's Cuba as a child to becoming one of the most recognized voices in protest art, Adele's story is one of defiance, identity, and liberation through creation. This conversation peels back the layers of what it means to fight with your pen and how art can become a force for reclaiming truth. And you know we're all about truth at AW Confidential. Enjoy this episode. Congratulations on Worm and Freedom. I watched the film. I loved it.
Thank you.
It was it was it was sort of brief but powerful, and there was so many messages, and I'm grateful to you for creating a space where you're inspiring, younger creators to take a risk. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, you were, I believe, only 10 years old when your family fled Cuba. 9, 10.
I was eight. Yeah.
You were 8. What do you remember about that moment of leaving, and how did it shape your earliest idea of freedom? Because that's pretty young, impressionable, not age, no?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was the first time that I had seen my parents scared, so it made a big impression on me in terms of when I grew up. My dad was always very confident, and my mom was very happy, and it was the first time where I could see in their faces that they were very scared about what was going on, and um, very much like, what are we going to do next? How is this going to, because it was a process that took about 6 or 7 days to leave the country. And I think that's what I remember the most, the tension around that. And then like the final release when we were able to get on a boat and leave. But but then it was sort of, and I wanted to get that into the book, that just when you think something is fine, you're finally free, or you're finally in good hands, and then something else happens. So that's what I tried to show in the book. Well, finally, when we do get in the boat, then you land in the United States and you put it into another detention center, and you don't know what's going to happen there because you're split from the rest of the group. So and you don't have any papers, you don't have anything. So there was constant uh, tension where the fact that it actually happened and we're able to leave the island and come here is kind of a miracle, because there were many people who along the way did not have the right paper. The what the Cuban military was doing was, for example, putting prisoners and other people from insane asylums into boats along with the families. And if you protested and said, no, we don't want to take any prisoners, then they would take the family off the boat and send them back to their homes. So the boat captains and the families were punished if you didn't take um, sort of these bad elements.
Mhm.
I have other people that I know that were not able to leave because of complications like that.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm, the world we're living in is, it for me, it just feels surreal right now. But as someone that grew up under censorship, how do you navigate self-expression in today's world where even quote unquote free countries um, try to silence voices? How do you manage that?
I know my rights, so that's how I manage it. I do whatever I want, whenever I want to, because I'm an artist and I have that right to do so in this country. If you're going to try to take that away from me, you're taking away my living, my expression, my way of life, and I'm not going to put up with it. So, if anything like that happens, we're going to court, and we'll figure it out. But I think the one thing they have at least respected in this country so far, um, is the right to free speech and free expression, and they're not going after artists yet. They're generally not going after musicians or opinion. They're going after people that don't have power, because um, they are what they are, and that's what people in those positions do. They go after the weak and people that don't have that are not rich. They don't have money. They don't have representation, and
They don't know their
they
rights
yeah,
either.
they don't go after artists because they know they're going to lose that fight, because the freedom of free speech is one of the biggest things that we have in this country, and it's in the Constitution, right? There's many other things that are not in the Constitution, like um, rights of immigrants or whatever. Um,
Mm.
so I grew up with parents that in Cuba, even under the dictatorship, were expressed themselves. They went out had conversations with people, and they told you what they thought. If you're Cuban, if you're Latina or whatever, you're not going to tell you what to say. That's just impossible. So
Ah,
good luck.
we come from a long line of resistance, I have to tell you.
And if you try, I mean, if you want to really piss me off, tell me what I can and can't say. Then I'm gonna really do something even more. So
Eh,
that's my situation. If I ever feel like I don't like what something is going on, then I'll do even more, and I'll be worse and all that. So
and
um,
I'm actually, thank you for sharing that, but there was something that I was curious about, and I kept going back and forth, back and forth. Should I ask? But I'm going to ask. Your covers, particularly the melting Trump head on Time magazine. I will never, it's one of those images that you just don't forget. And it almost, I think it sort of became a global symbol of resistance. It at least, at the very least, sparked reaction. At what point did you realize that your art could speak truth in a way that sometimes words can't? Because you seem very intentional with your art.
I think yeah, I mean, probably a very young age when I was, that's the way I found to communicate when I arrived in this country. I was about 8 or 9 and I didn't speak English. And I found communication through drawings. Like I would draw things for my friends or for the teacher because I like lunch or water. I didn't know how to say these things. So I would draw, do a drawing for the teacher because I wanted to do something.
Wow.
And then I saw as we got into middle school and high school how images were just different than words. Yeah, generally because you're going to look at my image whether you want to or not. You're, it's in front of you. You can't avoid images. Whereas a book or a writing, you have to, okay, I'm gonna take my time to read this book, and I'm gonna go out of my way to read this story. And if I start reading it, you know, 3 seconds into it, I'm not gonna finish it. You won't know the point of it. You're gonna know the point of my image in about 1 second to 2 seconds. You can't avoid it. And especially, so I found even more power in it when the internet kind of arrived, and later social media, where we're surrounded by imagery, and so much imagery that when that you kind of get dull to it. There's so much information out there, visual information, but when a strong, impactful image shows up in your world, you're going to pay attention to it, and that's why I think it
100%.
has a bit more punch than writing.
And it literally just sort of lingers. As soon as, as soon as I saw it, I was going through sort of the prep work. I said, wow, I remember this.
Yeah, you remember,
Yeah,
you don't forget it easily.
yeah. And one of the recurring themes in your work is liberation. How does the idea of freedom show up for you today, not just in your art, but in how you move through the world as a father, as an immigrant, as a creator?
I mean, I think it's key for everything. It's key to art, to music, to writing. The idea that you're open to do whatever you feel like doing at that moment. If you don't have that as an artist, oh my God, it's already so difficult to make an image, to to make music, to make art, to write. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of you're very tense about it, about just the act of it. So on top of that, if you have like I can't say that, like if you live in Cuba and you're a writer, or an artist, you have an idea and you immediately go, I can't do that. I'll go to jail for that. I can't do this. I can't do that. So it just brings many more levels of um, difficulty to just work. If you don't have they don't have that feeling of freedom. Like I listen to rap music a lot, and rap and hip hop and even salsa. It's about the moment, and you got to capture it in the moment, and you can't have anything get between yourself and your music and yourself in that moment where you're painting something. um, and to do that, you have to feel free and be liberated to just go into places that are complicated, dark, improper. You know, you can go that and then see what happens with it. You can choose not to publish it, but you should be able to just live in a world. So this is what my studio is in here, a place where I can just paint and do whatever pops into my head at any time.
I can't relate to that. Now, you've graced I think about 200 magazine covers from Time to New Yorker to Der Spiegel, using your art to challenge and inspire. Coming from a Cuban immigrant family that fled oppression, you've said that life is temporary, and I love that. And I truly believe that, and I try to live it every day. And that taking risks is essential. And that's something that as I get older, I'm learning that taking risks is actually you need to do that obviously in an I call it a calculated risk. I'm not, I'm not completely just reckless. What's the boldest risk you've taken in your art that made you feel truly alive and free, which was something you referred to a few moments ago?
Hmm. Boldest risk I've taken in my art. I mean, there's many of them, and some are more practical, and some are more, you know, um, in the art itself. I mean, a small risk that I took that paid off in the long term was when I was very young, in 22 or so. I was desperate for a job, and I finally got one after a long time of looking, and I was set to start. And it was a very small magazine that wasn't very good, but it was a job, and I was about to start. And then for some reason, at the last minute, I decided to call Time Magazine just to say, "Hey, do you need anyone there?" And I talked to a guy. He's like, "Yeah, we have something. You want to come in for like a week or two?" And the other job was full time with benefits and all that stuff. And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I
Wow.
told that job that I did. I said, I can't go in. I'm not going to start that job. I have this offer from Time Magazine, which is really just a week, like a temp job. And the guy was like infuriated, and I said, I feel like there's something here. I went to that job at Time Magazine. I ended up working at Time Magazine for 15 years after that, and it led to all these, getting to know everyone that worked there and getting to do all these covers for them because they know me, etc. So
Wow.
it was a risk as a 22-year-old to take, but it just paid off in the end. And more directly work related, is that image of the Trump beheading the Statue of Liberty that has that very probably my most well known image, and it's a risk in terms of the imagery that I was working with. And comparing Trump to a terrorist and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, let me just see what happens. And I put it up on Twitter as in Twitter, I was at that time, I was just doing whatever. And I put it up, and it became like huge on my Twitter feed, very
Wow.
viral online and everything. And then about 3 days later, the Der Spiegel magazine called me and they said, "Hey, we really love that thing that you have on Twitter. Can we publish it on our magazine cover?" And I was like surprised. And then they published it, and it became probably the most symbolic image of the last 8 to 10 years, based on a risk that I took, just thinking that at that time it felt like the right image for me to make. And um, then it just took off. And then I think it was about 3 months that I was doing press with all sorts of TV shows and print media about one image, and then the image went to protest. People, you know, it just became like a cultural icon. But yeah,
And it
it's
will
the
live
kind of
in our
thing.
minds forever.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that I could have said, I'm not gonna put this up, and
100%.
that's why I tell all artists and musicians is put it out there and let audience decide what they think of it.
Thank you for that. That's inspiring. And I can't close the interview without asking you this. If freedom is a verb, what is the most daring action you've ever taken to protect it?
Uh,
Which is something right now that
it's what is the most daring action? It's me right now. What I do, man. They're freaking deporting immigrants, deporting Hispanics. They're looking into records to see what you did, da 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 da, and see if they can find an excuse to send you back to the country you came from. So I can't think of anything riskier or whatever than what I'm doing right now. But I fortunately have never committed a single crime. I have never smoked a single joint. I paid all my traffic tickets. So if something happens to me, then we're all screwed anyways.
Adele, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story and your gift.
Thank
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a great time. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Edel Rodriguez. It was such an honor to have him on the podcast. Freedom isn't passive. It's not just a right, it's a responsibility. Whether you speak it, paint it, or move through it, freedom demands presence. Today, Edel reminded us that sometimes the loudest truths are told without saying a word. So tell your story, draw the line, rewrite the page if you have to, but don't let anyone define your freedom but you. I hope that you feel empowered and inspired, and remember that this is AW Confidential, where nothing is confidential, and freedom, that's just our favorite truth bomb. I'll talk to you soon, loves.